There's this forest in Japan, if anybody's heard of it, it's called Aokigahara, and it's a real place, and it's the second most popular spot in the world where people commit suicide, so kind of crazy. But it's really, really beautiful forest, and because of the density of the trees, when you're in there, there's almost no wind. There's not a lot of animals that actually live in there either, so it's just really, really quiet, and you always run the risk of stumbling on a dead body, so it's crazy, and it was, if I could say, inspiring to write a story. So I wrote this book that's got two different narratives. The main narrative follows an American college student and his Japanese-born girlfriend as they try to find some sort of evidence of her sister that disappeared there a year before, so it's kind of like to bring some closure to the relationship, and it's about their relationship and their communication problems and whatnot. But between those sections are vignettes about how people came to the forest to die, specifically why in some cases, how they chose the method, all that kind of stuff. Again, very uplifting, I know, but to try to talk about the breakdown of communication and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to read one of those, maybe two, depending how fast I read. So I guess you can let me know if I have time or whatever. So here we go. Haruka had wanted to die in Paris during Fashion Week, but it was not meant to be. With a busier schedule than usual, as well as a speaking engagement regarding Asian women in the fashion industry, she had no time to herself to accomplish the feat. So, as it had for many years, the desire to end her life faded for the time being as she walked the catwalk in high-end wear, attended parties and galas studded with film and television celebrities, was treated as if she, simply a girl from Japan, mattered in the grand scheme of things, and she bought into it, as she always did. Tall and glamorous, it wasn't hard for Haruka to find things to occupy her time. Sinful cordials of various sorts, drugs, men and women. But these high times were matched with low lows, periods of great unease where the burden of being the new it girl weighed heavily on her, and that one day her looks would fade, and everything she had based her young existence on would be gone along with them. During these times, she retreated to her apartment in Tokyo, alone, reading and writing poetry, posting on her blog, and looking desperately for a connection, for someone to tell her that there was something noble about what she did. These times of solitude never lasted long, though. Her popularity kept her phone ringing with jobs, emails crashing in by the hundreds, everyone who wanted a piece of her while she still was very much it. And this pressure, this constant need she would feel to make everyone happy, to be very much the life of the party, ate away at her. She was a ghost, she decided, seen but not heard. Haruka's most recent self-exile, back in Tokyo for 3 months before a 6-week North American excursion filled with higher-profile jobs than she had ever previously been offered, seemed exceptionally discouraging to her. The busier she became, the more overworked she was, the more disenchanted she found herself. She wrote feverishly lines of poetry, vague musings on the meaning of existence and what the point of it all was, declining lunch dates with friends and dinner dates with would-be suitors. She even contemplated that she more than likely suffered from some sort of severe depression, but it had gone unnoticed, forever perhaps, because no one wanted to look further than her splendid features. That no one wanted to believe someone like her, a true beauty, could be so flawed. During this time, between regular Ambien-induced naps, the only way she was able to truly shut out the world, Haruka, in an attempt to make sense of her existence, of the very state of her constant unease, tried piecing together a timeline of when she began feeling like everything was so pointless, trying to pinpoint how and why it would have started. And during her subconscious digging, she unceremoniously realized it had always been there like a pit inside her, that she couldn't remember ever not feeling this way. This realization was a comfort to her, of all things, knowing this was part of her, that perhaps she had been broken since birth, and like that, a wave washing over her, the desire to end it all returned, but with less malice than before. Haruka, for the first time, saw this inevitable ending as her destiny, what she was born to do. Others would work and have families, do things that inspire, but she, the current envy of the fashion world, the girl everyone wanted a piece of, would shine bright and then suddenly be gone, making the world a better place without her in it. And for the first time in a long while, it all made sense. So Haruka wrote one last cryptic entry in her blog entitled Hello Forever, gathered the rest of her Ambien and some Zolpicone she had been given to by a friend in Berlin, packed a light bag and told the hail taxi driver that Aokigahara was her destination. The drive was expensive, not that it mattered, but shorter than she had thought it would be. She told the driver when he stopped her that she was meeting a friend so as not to raise suspicion, and he happily took her trip and zoomed off back toward civilization. In the forest, she took the first dose of pills, admiring the trees, reaching out to touch the knotty bark and twisted limbs that fell near the path, and marveled at the quiet of the place, that even the birds seemed to stay away from this place of death, a solitude she had never felt before it. She moved deeper into the woods, studying everything from the dark rock formations and the path at her feet to the signs pleading for those thinking of ending their life to rethink and turn back. She swallowed pills at first by the pair, then in groups of 4, and finally, an hour and a half into her trek, finding it harder to keep going, her limbs reacting sluggishly to her thoughts, the pills taking effect, she finished the last of them, 18 in total, she thought, or perhaps 19. She could feel the sleep take hold of her, more forceful now, the warmth of her very last moments on earth, and she found a spot of a small hill a ways from the main path and lay down, admiring the scene around her, wondering how long until they had forgotten her. Not long, she figured, and how better they would all be after she was gone. And, for the first time in as long as she could remember, as her eyes shut and the world went black around her, Veruca smiled. Okay, sorry, I covered that fast, so. Alright, so there's uplifting piece 1. So suicide is, in this book I don't try to make any excuses for it or try to explain it really. It's just something that happens all over the world, and in Japan it's a big crisis. It happens a lot there. There was actually, if my memory serves me correctly, I think sometime in the 90s there was this book that was released called Manual of Suicide, actually, and it caused a big uproar because it actually listed out in detail all the different ways that you can kill yourself, how to do it, different ways, how to do it correctly. It was a really, really big deal. So part of this next piece is kind of inspired by that. So, all right, and that's clearly enough depression for the night. All right, EC and Kuyu could not believe such a book existed. An entire manual devoted to the method and means of suicide. And even more so, they could not believe such a book was readily available to buy. But once they had it, the two boys became obsessed with it, with what it preached. That suicide was noble, even honorable, something not to be looked down upon at all, an individual choice that was neither illegal nor against any national religion in Japan. Initially, it was the draw of the macabre that danced in their heads. For instance, they had no idea before reading the book that there were so many different means of suicide. But the more they read on the internet, the more curious they became. They would meet at one another's homes after school and research feverishly, discovering the existence of internet suicide cults, groups of people that would commit suicide together, advocating that it did not have to be a solitary act at all, but something shared by like-minded individuals. Even more intriguing was that some people were adamant that group suicides presented a sort of illumination at the end of life, before it was all over, that was otherwise impossible to experience in the world. The boys weren't particularly lonely or depressed, but they were bored, so this new passion of theirs took a hold of their lives above all else. As they built their courage, they would print articles of group suicides that had been successful. Most recently, 9 found dead of carbon monoxide poisoning in a van, analyzing what went right and wrong, consulting the suicide manual to determine what method would be the most ideal. They joined chat rooms and talked to others like them that had become enamored with this idea, discussing alternate means and the most ideal locations, finding many were as young as them, if not younger. It became to these cultists less about the need to end their lives and more of an ideology, something their parents and elders and the generations before them could never understand. The most exclusive of clubs, and that in itself was reason enough to entertain such notions. The more they prepared and talked with their new friends, who they oftentimes were invited to join but declined out of fear as they were not quite yet ready, the more they withdrew themselves from the real world. Finally, after an online friend of theirs, a girl who called herself Coco, joined a group who died by charcoal burner, the boys decided it was their time to join those who had gone bravely before, so they split their tasks. EC would take his mother's sleeping medication while Kuyu would find plastic bags. And they left the watchful eye of their friends and families in their well-to-do neighborhoods to head for Aokigahara, where they could die in peace, uninterrupted in order to fully experience the enlightenment. They had many offers almost daily to join other groups. One in particular that same day, again with charcoal burners, was especially appealing. But the boys wanted to limit any outside factors that could, similarly, prevent them from going through with it. They sent their goodbye messages to their online friends via their phones, all of which were greeted with enthusiasm or jealousy in being strong enough to do it, to be part of this righteous cause. And when they arrived finally at Aokigahara, so proud of themselves and what they would do, they practically beamed. In the forest, they began taking easy mother pills in order to dull their reflexes, and they marched through the dark woods with great resolve and purpose until their eyes grew heavy and they knew it was time. They picked a spot and sat cross-legged, across from one another, giggling and talking about what they expected to find on the other side, how great it would be to join their friends and be a part of something so wonderful. And as night fell, they placed plastic bags on each other's heads, holding it tight at the end, promising each other they would never let go, and finding the strength in one another they knew they would not have individually. Blackness soon came to them and took them over, and they struggled so naturally, trying to remove the other's hand from around the end of the plastic, weak from the pills and unable to do anything. Their eyes never straying from one another, looking out onto the world through foggy plastic as they had never seen it before.